Hi, my name is Sean Walker, and I'm a Principal Product Success Architect here at ServiceNow. Today I'm going to be talking to you about reclamation rules. So this is what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about what are reclamation rules, why we configure reclamation rules, we're going to talk about some considerations when you're creating those reclamation rules, and then we're going to talk about how reclamation rules work. Then I'll kick into a demo and I'll show you how to create a reclamation rule in the platform. So what are reclamation rules? Reclamation rules aggregate software usage over time. They specify either a minimum number of hours or the latest date that a software unit must be used before the software is flagged for reclamation. Why do I want to use these reclamation rules? It's simple. You can avoid purchasing more software when you know where your software has been allocated and how often it's being used. Reclamation rules reclaim software so that these rights can be freed up and allocated elsewhere. So I've seen where there's many times in an organization that a user will need a specific piece of software when in reality they only really need it for a short period of time. So a few examples that I've seen is I've seen requests come in where people have requested Project or Visio because I simply need that to do my job. But the reality is that they simply needed it to open a project or a Visio file. So, and just to review drawings or project. And then once that project's been completed, they really never use it again. So, think about the cost of Project and Visio. Those are very costly pieces of software for an organization. So, those are good candidates for reclamation because these person never really used those software after its initial purpose. So there's a few things you should be considering before you create a new reclamation rule. So you're going to want to take a look and think about some of the following. So what software model do I actually want to reclaim? And do I have the software usage information for this model? So we're going to be doing a separate video on software usage. So to find out how software usage information gets into ServiceNow, take a look at that video. So does my organization have any policies in place that covers the reclamation of unused software? So a lot of companies do have written policies about acceptable use, and a lot of times in those acceptable use policies, it specifies that if you're not using a specific piece of software, it can be reclaimed. So if the organization does have these policies, what are those thresholds? So does it say in the policy how many days or months it takes or how many times you need to use the software within those months? So you're going to want to need to know that so you can set those thresholds when you create the reclamation rule. Will the users be notified or have the ability to approve or deny the reclamation request? So this is definitely an option you can choose when you're configuring a reclamation rule. So you're going to need to know this. And then by default, the manager is the first approver, the approver of the request if they just choose to keep it. So is that approval sufficient, or are you going to need to maybe make some modifications to and have a different approval flow? How will the software be reclaimed? Is this something that's going to be reclaimed automatically using CSD, or is it a SaaS integration that has removal capabilities? Or is it going to be a manual process and that the specific reclamation request is going to need to be assigned to a specific group within the organization, and what group is that? Are there any exclusions that need to be considered, like maybe VIP users, right? It's not really a good idea to reclaim software for on the CEO because the CEO hasn't used it, right? Or is there perhaps some other restrictions, like maybe a specific department always has this software available to them, even if they're not using it, or maybe there's specific locations that don't need. So you do have the ability to put some filtering options on your reclamation rules. So you're going to want to know that. And then what do you do about that example we just talked about? What do you do about users who request software but have never used it? So there's a setting you can have where you can actually reclaim stuff that has no usage information. So these are all things to think about before you create that reclamation rule. It's going to make creating your rule a much simpler process. So how does reclamation rules work? So there's several scheduled jobs which process the reclamation rules. The key ones are the SAM, identify new reclamation candidates. That's the main job, and that's set to run monthly. Then there's another job, which is SAM, update existing reclamation candidates. That runs weekly, and that'll update those existing reclamation candidates that were created in that initial job. So these jobs compare the reconciliation rules that you create against the software usage data that comes into the system. And then when any of the conditions are met, some of those ones we just talked about, a reclamation, or sometimes known as a removal candidate, those get generated for you to address. And we're going to talk about removal candidates in a subsequent video and how to process through them. So now I'm going to jump into a Washington instance of ServiceNow and walk you through the configuration of a reclamation rule. Okay, so now I've logged into a Washington, D.C. instance of ServiceNow with software asset management installed. So today we're going to be setting up a reclamation rule for Google Chrome. Our company does not want Google Chrome. They want everybody to use Edge or the default browser, not use a third-party browser like Chrome. So we're going to go ahead and set up that reclamation rule. So underneath the filter navigator, we type in reclamation rules, and we go to here to reclamation rules. Reclamation rules is not available within the software asset workspace. It's under administration. So here we can see this instance has already got a whole bunch of reclamation rules. So by default, when you configure a SaaS integration, it will automatically set up a reclamation rule for you. So all the ones here you see with subscription software, these are all different integrations I have set up in this instance, and they have automatically created reclamation rules for those subscription software and these SaaS integrations. But Google Chrome, now that is an installed application. So we're going to want to set up a new reclamation rule for that. So we click on the New button, and that will bring us to the reclamation rule form. So here we're going to want to give it a friendly name. So we're going to say Google Chrome, and it applies to installed software. So you see we can also do an engineering app software, or maybe even an SAP named user. Type of reclamation rule. But for today, we know Google Chrome is installed, so we're going to use an installed software. Now, the next thing you have to decide is what that reclamation type is. Is it by total used time? So how many hours has the person used the software within X amount of months or days? Or whether it's based off of the last used date. So it's going to depend on your policies. Again, check your policies, see what your standard is going to be for your organization. So we're going to leave it at total use time and set that up today. The next thing you have to choose is, again, whether you want to create a reclamation candidate. So essentially what this is going to do is going to create that reclamation candidate if it matches for you to be able to process and work on removing that software. Or maybe you want to turn it off. You want to turn this rule off for a short period of time so you can actually uncheck this box, and that would turn off, essentially, the reclamation rule. Also in the presentation, we talked about what do we want to do about users with no activity. So people have it installed but have never used it, so there's no activity data. So our total use time will never work for us because there is no data. So we can actually include the no activity if we want, and that's going to generate a reclamation candidate for those instances where there is no activity. The next thing you're going to want to do is specify, is there an assignment group? So by default, it's set up to the software managers group. You're going to want to specify which group should this be assigned to, because there's likely going to be a default group maybe that handles the uninstall, if it's manual, of the Google Chrome. And the next piece of information you can choose is whether you want to notify the user or not. So when you check this box, what it's going to do is it's going to actually initiate an approval process behind the scenes. So what will happen is when a reclamation candidate gets generated, it will send an email to the user and will say, hey, we noticed you haven't been using your Google Chrome in X amount of days or X amount of time within the X amount of months, and we are going to automatically reclaim this software. In what the user has the ability to do is either, okay, I approve you removing this software, and they can click on approve and that'll approve them removing it, or they can deny the removal. In which case, if they say deny, no, I need to keep Google Chrome, basically the flow would then kick to their manager, where their manager needs to justify the approval. Yes, okay, this person does need to keep the software. So we're going to turn this on for now, and hopefully show you that later when we process the removal candidates. So here's where you get to specify how many days before it'll auto reclaim. So how many times do users get emails that they just simply ignore? And well, obviously you're not going to be sitting there forever waiting for them to decide. They're not using the software. They've had a chance to respond. We're going to give them 10 days to respond. And if they don't respond to that email that went out to them, we're going to automatically kick off the reclamation and reclaim this software. So also in the presentation, we talked about install conditions. So the ability to filter, include or exclude, whatever you want, specific attributes. So in this case, in the example we use in the presentation is, we do not want to reclaim software for VIP users. So what we can do here is we can come in and we can actually, so this is looking at your install table. So we're going to want to see the assign to field. So we're going to show these related fields. And here we can see assign to user fields. And on the user record, there is a setting for VIP. So when somebody's a VIP, you can check this box and says, okay, this person is a VIP. So right now it's saying VIP is true. So this rule, when it processed, it would only look at VIP users, and we don't want that. We want it to only look at, so if VIP is false, so basically anybody else that's not a VIP. So that's how I'm setting this one up. So this will basically run, if VIP is false, then it is going to process the reclamation rule and potentially generate reclamation candidates. All right, so the next section is the usage metering data. So you notice up here we said total use time. We can specify, okay, how many hours, etc. has the person used it. So we're going to say our policy is in the last 3 months, if the user hasn't used the software for a total of 10 hours, then it's going to generate that reclamation candidate. So we're going to save the record now. And then once you've saved the record, you can actually notice up here, nowhere did we specify what actual software model, which software are we specifically talking about. We only named it Google Chrome. We haven't told the system that it's Google Chrome we actually want to reclaim. So we actually need to add the specific software product to the reclamation rule. And that only shows up after you've saved the initial reclamation rule. Now, most people try and click on the new, but what new will do is new is going to actually allow you to create potentially a custom software model that you want to reclaim, which is not what we want to do here. We want to edit and choose from one of the existing software models. So we're going to search here for Chrome. And we see here we've got 2 different Chrome. So which one do I want to track? So if I click on it here, I can see down below it's giving me product, publisher, product type, and product classification. So that's the internet browser. So this looks like the right one. What is this other one? Oh, okay, this is a graphics driver for some reason. So we don't want to be reclaiming that one. So we're going to come back up here to this one, and we're going to select that one. and hit save. And now we can go ahead and update this reclamation rule. And what it's going to do is it's going to run the next time that monthly job runs to generate the reclamation candidates. It is going to look for Google Chrome, and it's going to look for anything that hasn't been used for more than 10 hours in the past 3 months, and it will generate those candidates then. One thing we didn't talk about was suites. I'm just trying to see here, find a suite in here that you might want to think about. So when reclamation candidates are created for the suite, if you create it at the parent level, so in this case you see Microsoft 365, with the newer releases of ServiceNow, I believe it came out in Washington, I want to say, what will happen is it will create reclamation rules for any of the products underneath that suite. So when you create a reclamation rule for the parent, it will include all of these suite components as well. And you won't be able to modify the reclamation rules for those components because it's driven by the suite itself. Now you still can individually say you only want to look at one component. You can actually just create a reclamation rule for that one component. So, and when you delete the reclamation rule or change the reclamation rule for the suite parent, it will apply to all the components as well. So, and that ends our demo. Hopefully you found it interesting and can start creating your own reclamation rules. In today's video, we covered what reclamation rules are and why to use them. We reviewed the considerations you should take before creating those reclamation rules. We talked about how reclamation rules work. And then I went through a demonstration of how to create a reclamation rule. For more information on this topic, you can go to the ServiceNow product documentation site. There's 2 good articles, software reclamation rules and add a software reclamation rule. I hope you found this video interesting, and make sure you check out the software usage and the reclamation candidates videos as well.